You little bitch. How dare you talk back to me? I don't dare. Mother, please don't be like this. You know you don't dare. Yet you still give me that attitude while your work is nowhere near finished? The woman's voice rang out shrilly, tearing through the small, old corrugated iron house. I don't dare. Mother, please don't. Hai bowed her head, her hands clutching her trembling arms. She didn't cry out loud. There was only rapid breathing and red-rimmed eyes trying to hold back the tears. You know better, yet you talk back? The work isn't done, and you already want to eat? The bamboo broom lashed against the floor, then struck Hai's shoulder, not hard enough to break a bone, but painful enough to be remembered. If you don't finish the work today, don't you dare step foot into this house. Mother, I beg you, I'll finish it, please stop hitting me. Her voice grew smaller. It was as if every word spoken had to be paid for with a piece of her remaining self-respect. Outside the narrow alley, a few neighbors stood in silence. Poor girl, she gets beaten every day. At her age, she should still be in school. I heard she dropped out since the 7th grade. Those words of pity floated in the air, but no one stepped in, no one intervened. In this poor neighborhood, everyone was too busy surviving. Hai, 17 years old. An age when people still dream about the future. As for her, she had been used to living like an adult for a very long time. She lived with her father, her stepmother, and her half-sister. Her biological mother had left when she was only 5. 2 years later, her father brought home another woman. From then on, home was no longer home. That woman, Hai's stepmother, was addicted to gambling and the lottery. Every cent her father made vanished into those red and black numbers. There were days when a meal consisted only of boiled vegetables and fish sauce. But by evening, she still had money to bet. Hai's younger sister was only 9, still attending a literacy class at the temple. As for Hai, she only knew how to read and write at a basic level. Just enough not to be called illiterate. Every day for Hai started very early. She went scavenging for scraps, picking up things people threw away, to exchange for a few dozen thousand dong. Her hands always smelled of plastic, trash, and small scratches that hadn't had time to heal. But there were moments, she would still stop, looking at the flowers by the roadside, watching couples pass by, and wondering, if I were born in another place, would my life be different? The thought only flashed by. Then it vanished, because she knew, she didn't have the right to dream. That night, after a silent dinner, the two sisters went to their room. The room was so small it only fit an old bed and a creaking fan. Before they could lie down, the sound of arguing outside rang out again. Give me the money, I need to pay my debts. Where is the money to give? Look at this house, there isn't even enough food to eat. If there's no money, then sell something. A silence followed, then the woman's voice turned cold as ice. How about, we marry Hai off? The air seemed to freeze. Are you crazy? She's 17, she's beautiful. Marrying her off would fetch a good price. We'll have money, and one less burden. Hai's father slammed his hand on the table. She is my daughter. Is she not my daughter too? She laughed shallowly. Or, how about renting her out to be a surrogate? That sentence fell like a knife. People pay a lot for that now. If she goes, it would be at least $1 billion. In the room, Hai sat frozen. She didn't cry. She only felt something in her chest shatter. Her younger sister, little An, tugged gently on her hand. Sister, are you going to be sold? The girl's voice trembled. Hai turned around. For the first time in her life, she didn't know how to answer. She just pulled her sister into her arms, gently, as if afraid that if she held too tight, they would both break apart. Outside, the arguing had not yet stopped. Inside, the two children sat in silence. One was terrified. The other began to understand that her life could be valued in money. A few days later, the house returned to its familiar silence. Hai's stepmother didn't mention settling debts or surrogacy anymore. Hai's father thought perhaps she was afraid of him, which was why she went quiet. But that silence made Hai more uneasy than ever. It was like the calm before the storm hits. That morning, Hai's father woke up early to pick up goods in the city center. He said he probably wouldn't be back until late afternoon. Hai also prepared to go scavenging as usual. But just as she stepped out the door, a shiny black car was already parked at the entrance of the alley. A strange car. It was far too strange for this poor neighborhood. And the little sister came running in from the gate. The girl's face was deathly pale. Sister Hai, Sister Hai. Hai startled and turned around. What's wrong? What happened to you? The girl panted, her hand clutching her sister's shirt tightly. Sister, run, go quickly. Don't come back until Dad gets home tonight. Hai froze. Why? And swallowed hard, her voice trembling. At the end of the alley, there's a very beautiful car. Mother is standing there talking to the people inside. She's even laughing. I'm scared, Mother. Mother is really going to take you away. The air seemed to freeze. Hai didn't feel afraid. She only felt cold. A chill ran down her spine. Not out of surprise, but because she knew that woman was capable of actually doing it. Are you sure? I saw it with my own eyes. I ran back to tell you right away. Hai looked out toward the gate. Then she let out a soft breath. Run? But where is there to run to now? The girl fell silent. Poverty sometimes isn't just a lack of money. It's not even having a single path to escape. Hai reached out and stroked her sister's head. It's okay, whatever comes will come. But right at that moment, a shrill curse echoed from the gate. And, are you hiding in there? Get out here now. And you too. Hai, don't you dare ruin my business. Hai clenched her fists. This time, she would not back down. She stepped out, standing in front of her sister. What you are doing is against the law. She's still small. The woman sneered. Oh, you dare talk back to me today? Let me tell you, you leave tomorrow. Hai's eyes widened. You dare sell me? Sell? The woman laughed out loud. 2 billion. Not everyone has a price like that. 2 billion. A number, enough to buy a life. And also enough to destroy one. Have you no shame? Hai growled. Why don't you go yourself? The woman's gaze became razor sharp. I'm old, but you're a virgin. They need you. The words fell, not loudly, but enough to make the air turn dead silent, and burst into tears. In other families, parents can't love their children enough. Why are you? The girl couldn't finish her sentence. Hai didn't turn back. She was afraid, if she looked at her sister, her heart would weaken. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Hai asked. The woman smiled faintly. If I don't sell you, that's when I'll fear retribution. A single sentence, cutting off every last bit of what is called human kindness. That night, Hai's father returned. Before he could even wipe away his sweat, and ran out and grabbed his hand. Dad, Mother sold Sister Hai. He froze. It was as if someone had just drained all the blood from his body. What did you say? Mother took the money, 2 billion, for her to go and be a surrogate. The whole world seemed to collapse. Mr. Kwong walked into the house. He sat down in a chair. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He only remained silent, a silence heavier than any scream. Hai stood in the corner of the room, looking at her father. For the first time in her life, she saw him age in a single instant. The man who had once strained himself to raise her was now helpless before his own family. He had once thought taking another wife was so his daughter could have a mother. But it turned out, he had delivered his child into the hands of someone without a heart. During dinner that night, Mr. Kwong didn't touch his chopsticks. The meal grew cold. The 2 children sat opposite him, no one daring to speak aloud. Dad, please eat something? Hai said softly. He shook his head. At a time like this, how can I eat? His voice was hoarse. Inside his heart at this moment, it was as hot as a frying pan placed on a stove. After tonight, tomorrow morning, they would come to take his daughter away. And he couldn't think of a single way to keep her. A man who had once carried the entire family on his shoulders was now helpless, right in front of his child. Ordinary people like me, what do we have to fight them with? The words fell, lightly, but painful to the very bone. Hai looked at her father. She clearly saw every wrinkle on his forehead deepen in a single night. Dad, go rest, she said softly. But he could not sit still. He paced back and forth in the cramped house, his footsteps heavy, as if dragging an entire lifetime behind them. Then, suddenly, he pulled Hai into a firm embrace. The hug was so tight, as if he feared that by letting go, she would vanish. It's my fault you're suffering. His voice broke. If I hadn't married that woman, If I were strong enough, you wouldn't have to stand here. His tears fell onto Hai's shoulder. Hot and heavy. I'm useless. Hai gently squeezed her father's hand. You're not useless? Her voice was small, but steady. You've been both father and mother, raising me all these years? I've never seen anyone stronger than you. He remained silent. He only held her longer. The father and daughter sat on the old wooden bench on the porch. The whole neighborhood had turned off their lights. In the distance, the thumping music from the city bars still vibrated. A noisy world. And one small corner, quiet to the point of heartache. My daughter has grown up, he whispered. Hai said nothing more. She only nodded slightly. In her heart, a decision had taken shape. She knew, if she didn't go, her father would have no money to pay. And the one to suffer the consequences wouldn't just be her. The next morning, the car arrived right on time. Not early, not late, like a sentence already determined. Mr. Kwong stood at the door. His hands trembled as he held his daughter's hand. He searched his pockets, pulled out a few crumpled bills. He pressed them into Hai's hand. Dad, I have nothing for you. His voice choked up. Take this, if something happens, you can manage. Hai looked at the bills. Her throat tightened. She nodded. Take care of your health. Dad, don't overwork. And as for her, she paused for a moment. If you don't stand up to her, later on, you will be the one to suffer. He didn't answer. He just looked at his daughter, as if wanting to etch that face into his memory, for the last time. I'm worried for you. Dad, don't worry about me. Hai said softly. Worry about yourself, and for little Un. The father and daughter wanted to say more, but a woman's voice cut them off. Are you done talking yet? It's not like she's your biological mother. Why is this taking so long? The atmosphere turned cold instantly. A woman stepped in, over 40 years old. Dressed simply, but her gaze was sharp and cold. She looked Hai up and down. Are you Hai? Yes. Fair enough. An evaluation, like inspecting merchandise. Then she turned to Mr. Kwong. You received 500 million yesterday. Today, I'm bringing another 500 million as a deposit. She placed a stack of cash on the table. After the birth is complete, we will transfer the remaining 1 billion. The air was heavy as lead. Mr. Kwong couldn't utter a single word. The woman seemed to understand that hesitation. Rest assured, when she comes to my house, she may be called a surrogate, but the young master is single. No complications. She paused, then continued, her voice soft but sharp. If she gives birth to a son, they could marry. If not, take the money. And it's done. A life, decided, in just a few sentences. Hai turned to her father. She nodded slightly. He understood. That nod was acceptance. And also, the final blow. The woman pulled Hai away. She only had time to turn back and look at her father one last time. He turned his back. He didn't dare to look. His shoulders shook. That was the second time in her life. Hai saw her father cry. The first time was when her biological mother left. This time was when he himself sent his daughter into a fate with no known day of return. The car began to roll. The narrow alley slowly receded behind. The old roofs, the familiar people, a poor childhood, but one that once held love. Everything faded away. People in the neighborhood stood watching. My God, she didn't even give birth to her. Yet she dares to sell her. I suspected it. I saw her taking the money yesterday. Poor girl, only 17 years old. Those words drifted behind the car. No one could be saved. All that remained was the sound of pity. Hai sat inside. Her hands were clenched tight. She didn't cry anymore. There are pains that, when they become too great, cause a person to fall silent. The car stopped in front of a large villa. The iron gates opened. A different world, alien, and cold. Get out. We're here, the woman said. Hai stepped down. Her heart sank. The woman whispered. In here, just know your place. Don't think too much. Hai nodded. I understand. She entered the house. A vast living room, leather sofas, warm yellow lights, but they didn't feel warm at all. On a chair, a man was sitting. He raised his head, sharp features, deep eyes, cold, but not soulless. That was the first time Hai saw him. Luong Tuan, the man who would change her entire life, in ways she could never have imagined. Young master, I have brought Miss Hai here. As soon as the woman's voice faded, the man on the sofa slowly raised his head. His gaze swept over Hai. Unhurried, expressionless, but it was enough to make her stand frozen. You may leave. His voice was deep, short. It didn't need emphasis, yet it carried an indescribable pressure. The door closed. In the vast room, only the two of them remained. Luong Tuan leaned back against the chair. He looked at Hai once more, this time for longer. How old? The question came abruptly. Hai faltered. She hadn't yet grown accustomed to this atmosphere. Nor was she used to the fact that she was standing before a strange man who held the power to decide her life. She didn't answer immediately. Luong Tuan frowned. Are you mute? The words were cold as ice water. Hai startled. Her hand unconsciously touched her lips. I'm not mute. Then why don't you answer when asked? His voice remained steady, but clearly, he had no intention of being patient. Hai squeezed her hands. A fleeting thought, she couldn't be weak forever. I didn't hear you clearly, she said slowly. It's not that I didn't answer. Didn't hear clearly? Luong Tuan tilted his head, his gaze deepening slightly. So, are you deaf? Hai's face heated up. She looked straight at him. Just because you have money, doesn't mean you have the right to say whatever you want. The air stalled. 1 second, 2 seconds. Luong Tuan didn't get angry. On the contrary, the corner of his lip curled up slightly. You have quite the mouth. Hai didn't reply. She knew her position well. But that didn't mean she accepted being trampled upon. You paid money to hire me, she said, not to humiliate me. Their eyes met. For the first time, it was no longer a buyer and the one who was sold. It was two people testing each other's limits. Luong Tuan stood up. He was a head taller than her. The distance was instantly shortened. Do you think I need someone who knows how to argue? He asked. His voice dropping low. Hai swallowed lightly. At least, I am someone who knows what they are doing. In answer, that didn't back down. A long silence stretched out. Then Luong Tuan turned away. Auntie Can. The housekeeper appeared immediately. Take her to change her clothes. He spoke as if everything that had just happened wasn't worth remembering. Prepare lunch. Hai followed Auntie Can upstairs. Each step felt like entering another world. Wide stairs, bright chandeliers, paintings hanging on the walls. Everything was alien. But the thing that overwhelmed her most was the room. The door opened. Hai stood frozen. The massive bed, many times larger than the rickety bed at home. The wardrobe, the dressing table, the wide window catching the sunlight. A place just like in the movies. But she knew this was not a dream. It was a cage. Change your clothes, Auntie Can said before leaving. Hai stood there for a few seconds. She didn't dare step inside. Until another voice rang out. Are you waiting for Auntie Can? Hai turned around. A young girl, dressed simply, with her hair neatly braided. Yes, I'm waiting. She told me to come up and help you. The girl smiled. My name is Heen. Hai nodded. Heen opened the wardrobe and pulled out a dress. Wear this one. Hai looked down. The dress was thin, revealing. She blushed. Do I have to wear this? Heen nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The young master has to like it. Hai faltered. Like it? Yes, Heen said softly. He wants to have a child quickly. A simple sentence, but it was enough to make Hai's heart tighten. That fast? Heen smiled gently. He's 37 years old, after all. Hai was stunned. 37? Did you think he was young? Heen let out a laugh. He's already a chairman, he's not in his 20s anymore. Hai remained silent. In her mind, the image of the man from earlier appeared. Cold, sharp, and lonely. Why would a person like that need her? Don't think too much, Heen said. He has his reasons. Hai looked down at her hands. I'm not some lady of the house, she said quietly. Just call me Hai. Heen shook her head. I can't, if he found out. He wouldn't be happy. Hai frowned. I'm not used to it. You'll get used to it. Heen smiled softly. Here, everyone has to get used to it. The words sounded very light, but Hai felt there was something very deep behind them. Blank. Blank. Hai's father sat in silence on the old wooden bench on the porch. That entire night, he didn't sleep. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't dare close his eyes. Every time he closed them, the image of his daughter being taken away appeared vivid in every detail. He clenched his hands, his voice turning hoarse. It's me. I'm the one who hurt you. Hai stood there, not crying. She only felt a terrifying emptiness in her heart. A very strange sensation, like someone had just taken something very important away, but she couldn't give it a name. You're not useless. She spoke very softly. You did everything you could. A sentence, so light that it felt as if the wind could blow it away. Yet it made that 40-year-old man collapse. He pulled his daughter into an embrace. For the first time, he cried like a child. Blank. Blank. The next morning, the car arrived. No horn, no noise. It just stopped quietly, like a predetermined sentence. Hai stepped out. She didn't turn back immediately. She looked at the house, the place where she had lived for 17 years. Poor, cramped, old, but it was the only place that had ever belonged to her. I'm going now. Her voice was so small that even she wasn't sure if she was actually speaking. Her father turned his back, not because he didn't want to look, but because he didn't have enough courage to look. The moment she stepped into the car, Hai suddenly understood one thing. There are people who don't leave because they want to, but because they have no other choice. Just call me uncle, then. Hai gritted her teeth. The word, uncle, she emphasized it so sharply, as if trying to slash through the distance between them. In her mind, the image of her father appeared clearly. Her father was only 40 this year. And the man standing before her, 37. Only a 3-year difference. And yet now, she was being pushed into the position of becoming his wife. A chill ran down her spine. It wasn't fear. It was a shudder. Luong Tuan stood up, raising an eyebrow at her, his voice indifferent. Once you finish signing tomorrow, bring it to me. Remember clearly, once signed, there is no changing your mind. Hai bit her lip. Yes, old uncle. The atmosphere dipped for a beat. Luong Tuan's eyes darkened. He said nothing more, simply turning his back and walking out. The door closed. Slam. The dry sound echoed through the vast room. Hai sat in a daze. The contract lay before her. But in her head was the old house. A place without a large bed, without chandeliers, without these luxurious walls. But it had her father. It had her sister. It had meager meals that were warm. Here, everything was available. Everything except the feeling of belonging. A tear fell. Very softly. Fine, let fate decide. She muttered. Then she picked up the pen. Signed. A decisive stroke. As if cutting off her own way back. That night. Knock, knock. Who is it? It's me. Heen's voice rang out from outside the door. Hai opened it. The girl walked in, holding a glass of milk, smiling brightly. Drink this, lady, the young master ordered it. Hai immediately shook her head. I'm not drinking it. Why be shy, lady? Sooner or later, you'll be his wife anyway. Hai froze. That title made her feel strangely uncomfortable. Heen, how old are you? I'm the same age as you, lady. Hai was slightly stunned. The same age, yet this girl had already worked here for 3 years. While she had just been thrust into an entirely different life. Hai lowered her voice. Does he have any problems? Heen blinked. What do you mean, lady? Hai hesitated for a moment, then spoke even softer. Does he, maybe, not like women? Heen froze. My God, lady, keep your voice down. Hai became even more certain. Don't you find it strange? A man like that, who doesn't love anyone, and instead hires someone to have his child? Heen swallowed hard. Lady, if the young master hears this, we're dead. Hear what? A deep, cold voice rang out from the doorway. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the entire room freeze. Hai stalled. Her heart skipped a beat. She slowly turned her head. Luong Tuan had been standing there for who knows how long. Leaning against the door. His gaze was fixed directly on her. Expressionless. But heavy. Heen immediately bowed her head and bolted out. The room was left with only the two of them. Luong Tuan walked in. Sat down. Crossed his legs. Did you just call me gay? His voice was terrifyingly calm. Hai remained silent. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because, for the first time, she felt herself backed into a corner. He let out a soft laugh. You had plenty of arguments earlier, why so quiet now? Then he stood up. He walked closer. The distance closed. Too close. He leaned down, speaking right next to her ear. If you're curious whether I'm straight or curved. His voice dropped low. The fastest way is to check for yourself. Hai startled, pushing him away. You are shameless. He laughed. He wasn't angry. On the contrary, he found it somewhat interesting. I have to learn to be a bit more youthful, so my wife doesn't call me old uncle anymore. She was choked with rage. But she didn't know how to talk back. This man was unlike anyone she had ever met. The next morning, Hai placed the contract down on the table. She turned to leave. Stay right there. His voice rang out. Go downstairs and make your husband a cup of coffee. Hai froze. She turned back, her eyes wide. What did you just say? He curled his lip. Your husband is very much awake. I am not your wife. She said firmly. I cannot love someone old enough to be my father. He didn't get angry. He only looked at her. For a long time. Then he spoke slowly. Love is not required. A beat of silence. Just stay. Those words were light. But they fell very deep. Blank. Underscore, blank. As soon as Heen's words finished, Hai took the cup of coffee, took a deep breath, and walked upstairs. The door to the room opened slightly. Before she could speak, she faltered. Before her eyes, Luong Tuan had just stepped out of the bathroom. On his body, there was almost nothing covering him. Time seemed to stand still. Her gaze accidentally caught his firm physique, his masculine lines so defined they made her heart race. And then, Hai panicked and turned her face away, her hands trembling as she covered her eyes, her voice stuttering. Uncle, what are you doing? Why aren't you wearing clothes? Thud. The door was closed behind her. She startled. Before she could react, she was pulled inside. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst. Are you shy? His voice was deep, carrying a hint of teasing. I am your husband, why cover your eyes? Hai bit her lip, her cheeks burning red. I'm not of age yet. Don't you do anything reckless. Luong Tuan let out a laugh. Not a mocking laugh, but a deep, warm sound, as if he were enjoying her reaction. Don't worry, in 1 month, you will be of age. The sentence was effortless. But it was like a rope tightening around Hai's mind. She tried to push him away. I only came here as a surrogate, not as your wife. He didn't let go. On the contrary, his arms tightened around her even more. His breath brushed lightly against her ear. Do you think, once you carry my child, you can still leave? The words weren't loud, but they were enough to send a chill down Hai's spine. She stiffened. Not entirely out of fear, but because for the first time, she realized she was standing before a man who would not be easy to resist. She tried to maintain her composure, speaking as if to reassure herself. The contract clearly states, I only have to be your wife if I give birth to a son. I will give birth to a girl. A silence followed. Then, Luong Tuan let out a laugh. Not angry. Not arguing. He only looked at her, as if looking at a stubborn child. Do you think that contract can bind me? The question was gentle, but it left Hai speechless. She suddenly understood. The thing binding her was never a piece of paper. It was her circumstances. It was the 2 billion. Back home, her father was still in despair. Uncle, let go of me. Her voice grew small. It was no longer as defiant as before. Not because she had weakened, but because she was exhausted. Luong Tuan looked at her for a second. Then he released his grip. As if he was in no hurry. Hai immediately backed away, maintaining her distance. She breathed rapidly. But she didn't dare look at him anymore. He turned his back, dressing himself naturally. As if what had just happened was merely a minor jest. But to her, it was a crossing of boundaries. A step she had already inadvertently taken. The coffee is cold. He spoke in a calm voice. Hai clenched her fists. She didn't know if she should be angry or if she should cry. She only knew one thing. This room was so vast. Yet she felt as if she had no room to breathe. Hai turned to him, her voice still laced with irritation. You still dare to blame me? Is it my fault the coffee is cold? Luong Tuan shot her a glance, his lips curving slightly. Whose fault but yours? Your shyness made your husband here completely forget it. Hai glared at him. Whether you drink it or not has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. He leaned down, his voice dropping low. Those pouting lips almost made your husband lose his restraint. Hai froze for a second. Her face burned hot. You are offensive? She turned away, her heart still racing. But before she could say another word, she was pulled along. The car stopped in front of a massive building. Hai frowned. Where is this? Your husband's company. He answered very naturally. I brought you here, so your husband could sit and look at you. Hai felt as if she might faint. She looked at him, her gaze unable to hide her sense of defeat. Uncle, aren't you afraid your employees will laugh? No. He opened the car door and walked around to pull her out. I have a private office. Inside the company. Employees bowed their heads in greeting. He only gave a slight nod, his face cold and expressionless. A completely different person from the man who had been teasing her minutes ago. Standing beside him, Hai suddenly felt the distance. A very clear distance. Between her and his world. Sit here, wait for me for 30 minutes. He spoke and then left. The office door closed. Silence filled the space. Hai sat on the sofa, her hands unconsciously clenching. She wasn't used to this place. Even less used to the feeling that she didn't belong. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. Hai began to grow restless. She stood up. Just as she was about to open the door. Click. The door swung open. A woman walked in. Wearing a tight-fitting dress. Her makeup was sharp. Her gaze swept over Hai, from head to toe. Full of contempt. Who are you? Hai stood up straight. She didn't bow her head. Nor did she look away. I was about to ask you the same thing. The woman let out a cold laugh. A country girl, and you dare to ask back? Hai clenched her hands. But her voice remained calm. I haven't had much schooling. But I know my manners. As for you, you have an education yet you speak like this? The moment the words left her mouth. Slap. A blow landed. Swift, hard, without warning. Hai's head tilted with the force. She didn't cry. She didn't cradle her face. She just stood still. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then she slowly turned back. Her gaze turned bone-chillingly cold. It was as if something within her had just shifted forever. Are you finished hitting me? Her voice was very soft. But no longer weak. If you're finished, wipe your hands. They're dirty. The woman froze. Before she could even react, click. The door opened. Luong Tuan walked in. He didn't ask questions. He didn't look at the other person. He only looked at Hai. His gaze stopped on the red mark on her cheek. His voice dropped low. Who hit you? Before Hai could speak, the woman hastily cut in. Antoine. This little girl. Silence. One word. A clean cut. He didn't raise his voice. But it was enough to make the room turn cold. He stepped closer to Hai. His finger gently brushed her cheek. Very lightly. Does it hurt? Hai shook her head. It doesn't hurt. She was telling the truth. She was used to this kind of pain. But for some reason, when he asked, it throbbed just a little. Luong Tuan turned around. His gaze now was entirely different. Cold, sharp. There wasn't a trace of teasing left. I told you, you are not permitted to enter my office. The woman stammered. Who are you to come in here? Who is she that you're defending her? Her voice began to rise. Look at her. She's nothing but a country girl. 1 second. Silence. Then, that country girl is my wife. The room seemed to freeze. Hai also stood stunned. She didn't think he would say that. At least, not here. The woman took a step back. Wife, have you gone mad? How old are you, to be marrying this child? Then what am I to you? Hai stood there. She heard it all. She saw it all. But she didn't intervene. Not because she was weak. But because, for the first time, she saw someone standing by her side. What you are to me, I don't care to know. Luong Tuan said, his voice as cold as ice. But now, get out. One word, decisive, leaving no path for retreat. The door slammed shut. The room fell silent. Hai sat back down on the sofa. She looked at him, for a moment, then she suddenly let out a soft laugh. You're quite something. Luong Tuan glanced at her. You were hit. And you're still laughing? Hai shrugged. It doesn't hurt. Then she looked at him. Her gaze holding something very strange. It's the first time someone stood up and said I was their wife. The words were very light. But they fell very deep. I didn't even argue with him. Did I? Hai sat in silence, looking out the glass window. But her mind was a mess. If I argue, I'm told I'm arguing. If I don't speak, I'm asked why I'm not speaking. She muttered a tiny curse to herself. Just loud enough for her own ears. What a weirdo. The atmosphere in the car dipped very quickly. Like someone had just pulled an invisible curtain over them. Luong Tuan said nothing more. Neither did Hai. She leaned her head back against the seat. Her heart suddenly growing heavy. The man sitting beside her had a career. A status. The kind of man who, if he wanted, could choose any girl he desired. Yet he spent a massive amount of money just to hire her. A girl who scavenged for scraps. Thinking about it, Hai found it so baffling that she didn't dare think further. She had briefly wondered if he might be part of the LGBT community. But looking at him, he didn't seem like it. Not in the slightest. If Luong Tuan knew that his contract wife had once thought such a thing, he probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. A man nearly 40, wooing a girl not yet 18 to be his wife. That fact alone was enough to make anyone feel that something was off. As evening fell, a downpour swept across the Saigon streets crowded with people finishing their shifts. The car kept moving. Neither of them said a word. Hai looked outside. Droplets slid down the glass, blurring the lights. She remembered, just the other day, she was still pushing a scrap cart, rushing under someone's porch to take shelter from the rain. But today, she was sitting in a luxury car. Dry and warm. Two worlds, placed side by side, yet completely unrelated. She didn't feel happy. She only felt empty. The car turned into the villa. The servants ran out with umbrellas. Heen saw her and hesitated slightly. Lady, what's wrong? Are you sad? Her voice was small, but enough for others to hear. Hai shook her head. She didn't want to talk. But her face had likely already said everything. Heen leaned in close and lowered her voice. Did you go to the office with the young master today? How do you know? Everyone in the house knows. She hesitated a moment, then whispered. But lady, I saw the way he looked at you. It was very strange. Hai frowned. Strange how? He was just being difficult. Heen's eyes widened. Difficult? Are you sure you aren't mistaken? I think he's very good. Hai pouted. You trust him that much? The girl bowed her head, her voice softening. He pays wages on time, and often gives extra. Hai let out a hollow laugh. So you've been bribed? Heen quickly shook her head. No, he really is good. Hai said nothing more. She only uttered a very soft sentence. Only to you. Curiosity piqued. Heen asked. Then to you, how is he? Hai looked around, then whispered, as if afraid someone would overhear. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Heen turned pale. Meanwhile, Wah, standing nearby, almost gave a thumbs up for being cool. Hai shot her a glance. What's so cool about it? I have little education. I don't know those slang terms. Heen forced a smile. Hai's little education comment accidentally made her feel uneasy. But I see that he truly cares about you. Heen persisted. Hai shook her head. Cares? Taking me to the office for one morning is caring? The girl nodded firmly. In her eyes, that was already a kind of special. Hai looked at her and laughed. How naive. She spoke slowly, her voice not loud but clear enough. These days, People of the same level find each other. Between me and him, it's just a transaction. Nothing else. Heen fell silent, but still shook her head very slightly. You don't believe he will love you? Hai didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands. Hands that had once picked up every plastic bottle. Every piece of scrap metal, now resting on pristine white bedsheets. Never, she said. In the room, the door closed. The space was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. Hai sat down on the bed. In her head, the image of that other woman appeared again. The way she looked at her. Laughed, and something she couldn't name. If it weren't for her father, she would have left already. She wouldn't have stepped into this world. She wouldn't be standing here, among things that didn't belong to her. Night. Luong Tuan entered the room. Not asleep yet? Hai shook her head. He looked at her for a moment. Then said, tomorrow, I'll have someone transfer the rest of the money to your father. Hai faltered. No need, she said immediately. In this world, there is no such thing as a free meal. That sentence made the room fall silent. Luong Tuan looked at her a little longer. You don't seem like a girl with little education. Hai did not look at him. She only thought. A person who has truly known hunger grows up much faster. Blank. He sat down opposite her. Can we put our cards on the table? Hai frowned. What cards? The contract. We already signed it. That was just a small part. He looked straight at her. His voice was slow and clear. I want the master contract. Hai took a deep breath. Speak plainly. In her heart, she had begun to grow wary. This man never did anything without calculating beforehand. Do you want to go to school? Hai froze. An unrelated question. Or, related in a way she didn't yet understand. No. She replied immediately. Don't beat around the bush. Say what you want. Luong Tuan let out a laugh. You're cursing me in your head, aren't you? Hai didn't answer. She simply lay down and turned her face away. She didn't want to continue. She didn't want to know more. But she couldn't leave either. A moment later. She felt someone approaching. Very close. His breath lightly brushed her face. Pretending to be asleep? His voice dropped low. I'll count to 3, if you don't open your eyes. I'll kiss you. Hai bolted upright instantly. What do you want? Luong Tuan smiled. In his eyes, it was unclear if he was joking or serious. Not sleeping anymore? His breath was still very close. So close, that Hai could clearly hear her own heartbeat. And this time, she wasn't sure which one she feared more. I didn't even argue with him, did I? Or is it that in this life, even silence is considered a mistake? Hai sat there, eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. Her heart as tangled as a coil of wire pulled too tight. If I speak, I'm told I'm arguing. If I don't speak, I'm asked, why don't you say anything? She let out a soft sigh. A very light breath, but it felt like it fell somewhere very deep inside her. The atmosphere in the car was so silent that the sound of rain hitting the glass was clear. Crowded afternoon in Saigon, the rush hour flow of people squeezing past. And there she was, sitting in a luxury car, yet feeling more out of place than ever. Just the other day, she was still pushing a scrap cart, leaning under a porch to avoid the rain. Today, she was sitting here. But strangely, she didn't feel better. Only more of a stranger. Hai quietly watched the man driving beside her. Luong Tuan. A man who, if seen from the outside, any girl would probably want to approach. He had a job. He had status. He had money. And he had a terrifying calmness. But that was exactly what Hai couldn't understand. Why would a man like him choose her? A girl who used to scavenge for scraps to enter this marriage. It wasn't for love. It was an agreement. The more she thought, the more her head spun. A fleeting thought made her startle, then she shook her head to dismiss it. No, it couldn't be. A person like him had no signs of the things she had just thought. Everything was still a question mark. The car stopped in front of the villa. The gates opened. The servants came running. Lady, you're home? Hai gave a slight nod. Heen's voice dropped, carrying a hint of inquiry. Lady, is something wrong? Hai hesitated for a moment. She knew, her face right now probably couldn't hide anything. But she didn't want to talk. She only gave a soft smile. A forced smile. It's nothing. Blank. Blank. The two stepped inside. Heen still trailed behind, her voice lowered as if afraid someone would overhear. Lady, I see, the young master looks at you very strangely. Hai stopped in her tracks. Strangely how? Heen hesitated a bit, then whispered. Like, care, but not like it's normal. Hai let out a hollow laugh. Care? She shook her head. He is not that kind of person. Heen's eyes widened. Why do you say that? Lady, I think he is very good. Hai turned to look at the girl. Her gaze wasn't sharp, but it made the person opposite her fall silent. He is good, only to you, she said slowly. As for me. Hai paused for a moment. He is like a wolf, in sheep's clothing. The atmosphere suddenly dipped. Heen turned pale. She didn't fully understand, but she sensed that something was not right. Blank. Hai stepped into the room. The door closed. She leaned her back against it and closed her eyes. A heavy feeling seeped into her chest. She knew where she was. A large house. A life that many dreamed of. But she had never felt like she belonged here. Blank. If it weren't for her father. Perhaps she would have left long ago. The feeling of being bought. It wasn't loud. But it was there. Smoldering. Like a wound that doesn't bleed but never heals. That night. She sat on the bed. She didn't turn on the lights. There was only the faint light from outside casting inward. She was thinking. Then the door opened. Luong Tuan stepped in. He looked at her for a moment. Not asleep yet? Hai shook her head. She said nothing. He walked closer, his voice dropping low. Tomorrow, I will transfer the remaining money to your father. Hai startled. No need, she said immediately. Fast and decisive. The entire room fell silent. In this world, Hai spoke slowly, there is no such thing as a free meal. She looked up at him. Her gaze did not flinch. The price behind it, I don't want to pay anymore. Luong Tuan looked at her. For the first time, his gaze was no longer as calm as before. You, he said slowly, are not like what I thought. Hai did not answer. She only smiled slightly. A very light smile. A girl, who had to support herself from a very early age. How could she be simple anymore? He pulled up a chair, and sat down opposite her. Can we speak clearly for once? Hai was silent for a few seconds. Then she nodded. Fine. The previous contract, he said, was only the surface. Hai frowned slightly. What do you mean? He looked straight at her. I want a different agreement. The air grew thick. Hai took a deep breath. In her mind, there was only one thought. A trap. Do you want to go to school? That question made her freeze. 1 second. 2 seconds. She looked at him, as if trying to understand. Go to school? Amidst all of this? Hai let out a soft laugh. Uncle, just say what you want plainly. Her voice wasn't loud. But it was very clear. Don't beat around the bush. Luong Tuan wasn't angry. He only looked at her. For a long time. In that gaze. For the first time. It wasn't a person who was buying something. It was more like someone trying to hold on to something that was about to slip through his fingers. Blank. Underscore. Blank. As for Hai, she didn't know where this story was headed anymore. She only knew that the deeper she went, the less certain she became that she could ever turn back. 18 years old. To an outsider looking in, they might laugh. An old bull eating young grass. But in that room, no one was laughing. There was only silence. And a little something that was very hard to name. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 9 p.m. The car slowly rolled into the courtyard. From her room, Hai looked down. Her heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, she hurriedly closed the door, locked it. Then climbed into bed and pulled the covers over her head. Like a reflex. A kind of self-protection that was purely instinctual. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Downstairs, Luong Tuan walked in. He looked up toward the staircase. He was in no hurry. He only gave a faint smile. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The bedroom door. He turned the handle. It wouldn't open. A second of silence. Then his voice rang out. Soft. But clear. Do you think, if you lock the door, I can't get in? There was no answer. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Inside. Hai lay perfectly still. She didn't dare breathe heavily. Her hands gripped the edge of the blanket tightly. So cold that she trembled with every small beat. Blank. Underscore. Blank. She waited. Waited for the sound of footsteps walking away. Waited for a moment of silence. Waited for something to settle down. But the more she waited, the greater the sense of unease became. Blank. Underscore. Blank. There was no knock. No one entered. Only silence. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai slowly opened her eyes. She thought, perhaps he had gone. A light breath had just escaped. Click. The door swung open. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai's entire body stiffened. Her heart felt as if someone were squeezing it tight. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Slow footsteps approached. Not rushing. Not forcing. But enough to make a person unable to hide. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The blanket was gently pulled back. Light filtered in. Luong Tuan stood there, looking at her. For a moment. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Asleep already? His voice was deep. Not loud. But it made it impossible for anyone to pretend any longer. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai squeezed her eyes shut even tighter. In her head, only one thought remained. Just stay quiet and it will pass. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A warm breath touched the back of her neck. So close, she could feel it vividly. If you don't open your eyes, I might think you're serious. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 3 seconds. Hai bolted upright. Uncle. Her voice cracked. I'm not sleeping anymore. Blank. Underscore. Blank. He sat down on the edge of the bed. He didn't touch her. He only watched. Not sleeping? Then why cover yourself so tightly? Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai couldn't find an answer. She only felt as if she were backed into a corner. Not because of his actions, but because of the distance. Too close. Blank. Underscore. Blank. She muttered. I'm not hot. A meaningless answer. But it was the only thing she could think of. Blank. Underscore. Blank. He nodded. Not hot, yet you're curled up like that. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Those words weren't heavy. But they made Hai's face flush. Partly flustered. Partly irritated. Blank. Underscore. Blank. She looked at him. For the first time, she didn't look away. You know I'm uncomfortable, yet you still ask? Blank. Underscore. Blank. The atmosphere dipped. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Luong Tuan was silent for a few seconds. Then he leaned his back against the headboard. Then what do you want me to do? Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai faltered. She didn't expect him to ask her back. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Go out. She spoke softly. But clearly. Blank. Underscore. Blank. He looked at her. He wasn't smiling anymore. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Are you afraid of me? Blank. Underscore. Blank. That question made it impossible for Hai to answer right away. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Was she afraid? Yes. But not entirely. Blank. Underscore. Blank. She was afraid of this feeling. Afraid of the fact that she had no control over anything. Afraid of being in a life where everything was decided by someone else. Blank. Underscore. Blank. I'm not used to it, she said. Slowly. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Not used to being here. Not used to you. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The words fell. No one said anything more. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Luong Tuan turned his face away. Something flickered in his eyes. Very briefly. Blank. Underscore. Blank. He stood up. Turned off the light. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The room plunged into darkness. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Then he lay down, on the other side of the bed. Maintaining his distance. Blank. Underscore. Blank. No touch. No words. Blank. Underscore. Blank. But the presence was still there. Very palpable. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai lay perfectly still. She didn't dare turn over. She didn't dare breathe heavily. She could clearly feel every beat of her heart. Pounding, so loudly. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Relax. His voice rang out in the darkness. If you stay that stiff, you'll be in pain tomorrow. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Hai clenched her hands tighter. Go back to your room, uncle. Blank. Underscore. Blank. There was no immediate answer. A moment later. Go to sleep. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Just 3 words. Blank. Underscore. Blank. No pressure. No more teasing. Blank. Underscore. Blank. But that's exactly what Hai couldn't understand. Blank. Underscore. Blank. She lay there. For a long time. Until her eyelids grew heavy without her even realizing it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In the darkness. Luong Tuan turned to look at her. For a moment. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Then, very gently, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair that had fallen on her cheek. Blank. Underscore. Blank. No one knew. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Except for that silence. It wasn't loud. But it began to change something that neither of them could yet put a name to. I didn't even argue with him, did I? Or is it, in his eyes, just opening my mouth counts as arguing? Hai sat in silence, her mind a mess. If I speak, he says I'm arguing. If I don't, he asks why I'm silent. She bit her lip gently. What a weirdo. The atmosphere in the car grew heavy. The afternoon rain in Saigon fell lightly, each drop hitting the glass like someone tapping a rhythm, steady and cold. Hai looked outside. Just the other day, she was still pushing a scrap cart, sheltering from the rain under a stranger's porch. Today, she was sitting in a luxury car. But strangely, she wasn't happy. She hadn't forgotten the reason she was here. A virtue already sold. A chance at motherhood, the price already calculated. In exchange for a sum of money that her family could never touch in a lifetime. Thinking about it, her chest felt heavy. The car turned into the villa. The servant, Heen, ran out to open the door and hold an umbrella for her. She looked at Hai for a moment, her voice low. Lady, is something wrong? Hai started. She didn't answer. Her face probably had the words, I'm sad, written all over it. It's nothing. She forced a smile. Heen tilted her head, leaning close to her ear, whispering, I think, the young master looks at you very strangely. Hai froze. Strangely how? Not like anyone else before. Hai let out a hollow laugh. Being mean, more like it. Heen immediately shook her head. No, I think the young master is good. Hai pouted. Good to you, maybe. She stepped into the room, leaving the sentence unfinished. In the room, Hai sat on the bed. She thought about him. A man nearly 40. Who had everything. And yet, spent money to hire someone like her. She didn't understand. The more she thought, the more confused she became. A fleeting thought made her let out a tiny laugh. Maybe he doesn't like women? But looking at him, he didn't seem that way. Everything was very normal. Even, too, masculine. Because of that, it was even harder to comprehend. Evening. Hai sat on the bed, hugging her knees. The door opened. Luong Tuan stepped in. His gaze was the same, deep, dark, and hard to read. Not asleep yet? She shook her head. He stood for a moment, then spoke, very calmly. Tomorrow I will transfer the rest of the money to your father. Hai immediately looked up. No need. Her voice was quick, almost cutting him off. In this world, there is no such thing as a free meal. The room went silent. He looked at her a little longer. You don't seem like someone with little education. Hai gave a soft smile, but her eyes remained cold. When you're poor, you have to grow up early. A very light sentence, but it seemed to carry an entire childhood behind it. He sat down opposite her. Let's lay our cards on the table. Hai blinked. What cards? The contract. She frowned. We already signed it. That was only the surface. The atmosphere dipped slightly. Hai took a deep breath. Speak plainly. In her heart, she had already begun to grow wary. He looked at her. Slowly. Do you want to go to school? Hai froze. That question was not in any of her calculations. She let out a short, sharp laugh. Just say what you want plainly. Uncle, don't beat around the bush. She knew. Nothing comes for free. Especially from someone like him. He chuckled. Lightly. But there was something very real about it. You're cursing me in your head right now, aren't you? Hai stayed silent. She turned her face away. A moment later, she pretended to lie down. I'm sleepy. He said nothing. He only walked closer. Then, he leaned down. His breath touched her face. Very close. Pretending to be asleep? She stiffened. If you don't open your eyes, I'll kiss you. The words were light, but they made her heart race. And then, he kissed her. A sudden kiss. No asking. No warning. Hai's eyes widened. Her entire body felt paralyzed. Time seemed to stop for a few seconds. There was only the sound of her heart pounding, chaotic. When he pulled away, only then could she breathe again. Uncle! She screamed. Her face was burning red. That was my first kiss. He raised an eyebrow. And? Give it back. He let out a laugh. A kind of laugh that was both helpless and amused. It's already happened, how do I give it back? She was furious. So furious she trembled. Her hand flew up. Slap. A sharp sound echoed. The room went dead silent. He stood still for a few seconds. His gaze darkened. You dared to slap me? His voice dropped low. More dangerous than when he was angry. Hai was instantly terrified. I'm sorry. But she still tried to speak. It was your fault first. He looked at her. For a long time. Then he turned his back. He walked out of the room. Without another word. The door closed. Hai slumped down onto the bed. Her heart was still pounding. She clutched her chest. Breathing heavily. She didn't even know what she had just done. She only knew that. If he had stayed for one more minute, she probably couldn't have handled it. That night, she didn't sleep. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling, and thinking, what exactly am I walking into? A transaction? Or something far more dangerous? Mrs. T did not think so. She frowned, her voice turning completely cold. I see that thou is obedient. From a decent family. Only she is worthy of being Tuyen's wife. As for this girl, her family is complicated. She paused for a moment, as if weighing her words, before continuing. A stepmother addicted to gambling, who has already sold her once. So who can guarantee there won't be a second time? I do not agree. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Mr. Tam sighed. Don't be unreasonable. I'm looking for a daughter-in-law, not a family lineage. The two went back and forth. Auntie Can stood by, not daring to intervene further. Finally, she quietly called to inform Luong Tuan. When he received the news, he was out with 2 friends. Just one sentence. The girl has left. He stood up immediately. He didn't ask further. On the way back, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His mind was a mess. He didn't think his parents would return so suddenly. Even less did he think that his mother would say those words to her. Arriving home, he walked in and looked at his mother. The woman had aged, but her gaze remained sharp. He didn't have the heart to speak harshly. He only asked, very softly, "Mother, where is Hai?" Mrs. Tu, who had been happy to see her son, felt her face darken upon hearing that question. "Why are you asking about that girl?" Her voice turned sharp. "I am being serious. You are grown now. You should marry thou. That girl is beautiful, talented, and a good match for you." Luong Tuan was silent for a few seconds. Then his voice dropped low. "I'm not asking about thou. I'm asking about Hai." She shook her head. "What is so good about her? Poor, a messy family. Do you plan to bring her home just to be a money printing machine?" He exhaled, slowly. "Mother, do you judge a person only by that? And what do you think?" He looked at her. This time, he didn't look away. A person isn't defined only by their circumstances. He paused, as if reflecting, then asked, "Why did father love you?" The unexpected question caught Mrs. Tu off guard. He continued, his voice still steady, "It's the same for me. I am not marrying thou." He looked directly at her. "A girl who doesn't know how to carry herself in public. I will not accept." The room went dead silent. He added, very clearly, "I have money. I have a career. I only need a wife who knows how to care, who knows how to stay." A long silence stretched out. No one thought he would say so much. He turned away. He didn't stay any longer. In his mind now, there was only one task: to find her. The city at night. Yellow lights stretched out. People passed by, noisy and alien. Hai walked alone. She didn't know where to go. She just walked, until she grew tired. She sat down on a park bench. The streetlights were dim, just like her life at this moment. She hugged her knees, thinking back to every word. Not worthy. Complicated family. She smiled. A hollow smile, but painful. She once thought, if she just did her part, everything would be peaceful. She naively believed that man wouldn't look at her with such eyes. But it turned out, it wasn't so. She bowed her head. Tears fell onto her knees. Hot, then cold. She knew she shouldn't have left. Her family still owed money. She didn't have the right to leave. At least, not yet. She took a deep breath, wiped her tears, said to herself, very softly, "It will pass." Her voice wasn't very certain, but she still stood up and headed back. On another street, Luong Tuan was driving. He didn't know where to start looking, until the sound of an argument reached his ears. He intended to ignore it, but something felt familiar. He braked, looked over, and saw her. Hai was being held back by a drunken man. "Come with me, it's late already." She pushed him away. "I'm not that kind of girl." Her voice trembled, but remained firm. He laughed. "Playing hard to get?" He pulled her harder. Passers-by looked, then moved on. No one stopped. She began to panic, but she still tried to keep her voice steady. "I'll scream." He didn't listen. He only saw a girl. "Let her go." A man's voice cut in. Cold. Brief. Hai froze. Turned her head. It was him. Just for a second. She felt a little lighter. Then she stiffened again immediately. The drunkard turned around. "Who the hell are you?" Luong Tuan didn't answer. He just pulled her toward him. Then, a punch. A decisive blow. "My wife," he said. Short. The air froze. Hai's eyes widened. I'm not. She pushed him away. I'm not anyone's wife. The words burst out faster than she could think. She only knew she had to deny it. Both men looked at her. One dazed. One stunned. She turned to the other man. If you're drunk, go home and sleep. Don't bother other people. Then she turned to him. And you too. Let's be clear. An old bull eating young grass. You might choke one day. A very strange silence followed. The drunk sobered up halfway. He stammered. You're really something? Hai didn't let up. She took out her phone. I'm calling the police. Her fingers shook, but she dialed very fast. The man turned pale. Wait, my mistake. No longer aggressive. Only afraid. Luong Tuan stood watching. A very strange feeling ran through him. This girl was not like what people had just said about her. Finally, the man was detained. The atmosphere calmed down. Hai stood there, breathing heavily. Her face was still flushed. She turned away, avoiding his gaze. He looked at her. For a moment, his eyes gradually darkened. Not because of anger, but because, earlier, she was being held. The thought of it. He didn't like it. She walked on. He followed behind, saying nothing. Just keeping a distance, just enough. The streetlights stretched out. Two shadows. One in front. One behind. Not touching. But not leaving either. Blank. Blank. I didn't even argue with him, did I? Or is it, in people's eyes, even silence is a form of defiance? Hai sat there, saying no more. A tiny thought flickered in her mind, one that refused to go away. To speak is wrong, but to remain silent is wrong too. The atmosphere in the car sank. Outside, the afternoon rain in Saigon fell steadily, the streetlights beginning to blur into long streaks against the glass. People were rushing home, while she, sitting in this luxury car, felt a strange, hollow emptiness in her heart. Just the other day, she was huddling under a porch, clutching her scrap cart, hiding from the rain. Today, sitting here. The distance between those two moments was not one of joy. It was something else, something she couldn't name. She knew why she was here. Not for love. Not by choice. But to pay a debt. A price, far too great for someone like her. She didn't dare think any deeper. The more she thought, the more confused she became. Only one thing she couldn't understand. Why would someone like Luong Tuan choose her? The car stopped in front of the villa. The doors opened, bright light spilled out. She stepped down, yet she felt as though she hadn't quite managed to step into another life. Lady, did you go to the office with the young master today? Heen's voice pulled her back to reality. Hai only gave a slight nod. The way he looks at you, it's very strange. Strange how? It's not like the way he looks at others. Hai smiled faintly, but the smile was hollow. You must have seen it wrong. But when she went up to her room, she stood before the mirror, looking at herself. For a long time. There are no fairy tales in this era. Winds of the same level meet clouds of the same level. She knew her place. Very clearly. That night, she didn't sleep. When Luong Tuan entered, the already quiet room felt even tighter. Not asleep yet? She shook her head. He stood there, watching her for a moment. Then he spoke very softly. Tomorrow, I will transfer the rest of the money to your family. Hai faltered. No need. The answer came faster than she thought. She looked at him. Her voice dropped. In this world, nothing is ever free. He was silent. Then he let out a soft laugh. Not a happy laugh. But like, he had just discovered something interesting. Can we speak more clearly? Hai frowned. What else is there? The previous contract was only a part. She looked at him, feeling a chill run down her spine for the first time. What's the other part? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her. Longer than usual. Do you want to go to school? That question came at the wrong time. Or perhaps it came at a time so right that she couldn't react. In Hai's mind then, there was only one very real thought. This person is more dangerous than I imagined. She shook her head immediately. No need. Then she added, more bluntly. Just say what you want plainly. Uncle, don't beat around the bush. He smiled. But this time, his gaze was different. You're smarter than I thought. Silence returned. But this time, it was no longer comfortable. Hyde turned her face away. She didn't want to continue. Didn't want to understand more. Didn't want to step deeper into something she knew she couldn't control. But just when she thought everything would end there, his voice rang out again, very close. Are you afraid of me? She didn't answer. She just closed her eyes, pretending to sleep. But she knew he was still watching her. And that made her heart skip another beat. Blank, underscore, blank. He's rich, and he's like this. Hai stood there. The thought popped into her head, and even she found it laughable. Why would someone like him choose me? She brushed it off. Wake up, who do you think you are? What are you thinking about that you're standing there like a statue? His voice pulled her back. Hai startled, quickly shaking her head. Nothing, I'm not thinking about anything. He looked at her. He didn't ask further. He only gave a soft laugh. The kind of laugh that said he had seen right through her. If there's something, say it. Keeping it inside, it's easy to choke. Her eyes widened. Are you that bored, uncle? He shrugged. Depends, if it's about you. Then yes. Hyde turned away. For some reason, the more they spoke, the harder it was to breathe. Do you like teasing people that much? No. He answered immediately. I only tease the one I've noticed. She froze. Her heart missed a beat. Then she immediately snapped back. Noticed what? You're talking nonsense. He stepped closer. The distance was shortened without warning. Then tell me, why won't you agree to marry me? Because I don't want to. She replied quickly. So fast it was as if she had prepared it. He nodded. Don't want to, or don't dare to. That question wasn't loud, but it landed right where it needed to. Hai fell silent. 1 second. 2 seconds. What are you afraid of? His voice dropped. Or is it that you think you don't belong here? She turned sharply. That's right, I don't belong here. The atmosphere stalled. He looked at her. Longer than usual. Then he said very softly. I don't belong in your world either. That sentence wasn't an argument. It wasn't a denial. It was just a truth placed between the two of them. Then why? The words slipped out. But she stopped halfway. He finished for her. Why you? She didn't look at him. She only looked down at her hands. Her thin fingers, trembling slightly. I don't know either, he said. It's just that when I saw you, I didn't want to look at anyone else anymore. Silence. A very simple sentence. No promises. No future. No guarantees. But it left her, not knowing how to respond. Hyde turned her face away. You talk like you're trying to deceive people. He laughed. Yeah, I think so too. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled her closer. Not roughly, but enough that she couldn't avoid it. But if it is a deception, he spoke very softly, right beside her. Then I want you to try believing it, just once. Her heart beat fast. Clearly. She pushed him away. Not with force, but with certainty. I don't like being forced. He nodded. I know. Another silence. Then he said, in that case, don't be forced. She looked up. Stay, because you want to. Those words were light, but they left an echo. Hai didn't answer. She simply lay down, pulled up the blanket, turned her back to him. But long after that, she was still not asleep. And she knew the person behind her wasn't sleeping either. Blank, underscore, blank. Hai stood still when asked. The question of whether to call her grandmother or aunt sounded small, but it made her not know where to place herself. Yesterday, she said she wasn't worthy. Today, she pulled her down to sit beside her. The distance between those two statements was shorter than she thought. Are you still angry with me? Hai shook her head. Not because she wasn't angry, but because she didn't have the right to be. Mrs. Wei's hand took hers. It was warm, but it only made her feel more out of place. I was only worried for my son. Her voice slowed. He's 37. He has everything. He only lacks someone who will stay. Hai listened. She didn't react. She only looked down. I don't need you to answer right away. But if you stay, stay for him. Stay. That one word was heavier than anything she had ever imagined. She took a breath, then spoke plainly. No detours. I am here because of a contract. The atmosphere stalled. I will do my part, and then I will leave. Mrs. Wei wasn't angry. She only looked at her. For a long time. Do you really think you can just leave? Hai didn't answer. Night fell. The house was silent. But the silence was not the peaceful kind. The sounds of an argument erupted from downstairs. Intermittent. Frantic. Hai bolted upright, not out of curiosity, but because something felt terribly wrong. You know I love you. Love, or is it my money that you need? His voice was ice, not loud, but razor sharp. Hai stood by the staircase. She didn't step down, she only listened. Do you really think I know nothing? A long silence followed. Then, the sound of sobbing. No one saw her, and she didn't want to be seen. A moment later, the door slammed shut. The silence returned, but this time, it felt much heavier. Hai retreated to her room. She had just laid down when the door swung open. No knock. He stepped in. He wasn't his usual self. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His breathing was ragged, and the calm in his eyes had vanished. Hai sat up quickly. Uncle. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, as if trying to restrain something deep inside. Then he spoke in a very low voice. I'm not okay. 3 words. No explanation. Hai looked at him. For the first time, she didn't see the shameless old man. She saw someone losing control. She backed away slightly. What's wrong with you? He closed his eyes for a second, taking a deep breath. I'm going out. That didn't sound like him. He turned around, stopping at the door. He didn't look back. Don't open the door for anyone. Then he left. The door closed. Hai sat still on the bed, her heart still racing. But this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was because of a very strange realization. This man, he just stopped himself. And she wasn't sure, if it were someone else, whether they would have stopped. In the hallway, the sound of footsteps faded away. In the room, a very faint scent remained. The scent of something that had almost crossed the line. Hai lay down and closed her eyes. But long after, she was still awake. And for the first time, she wasn't thinking about the contract. Blank. Underscore, blank. By midnight, she was startled awake again by the sounds of a confrontation downstairs. Get out. Go quickly. I don't hit women. No. Tuan, you know I love you. Why are you so heartless with me? Downstairs, Thao was collapsed on the floor before his feet, her face drenched in tears. Tuan looked at her with cold contempt. You love me? Do you love me or my wallet? I love you truly. Tuan raised an eyebrow and sneered. You love me so much that you climbed into bed with a junkie? Caught off guard by his sharp question, she stammered. I didn't. I don't know any junkies. You don't know them? Yet you stayed at that apartment complex. Gathering to use drugs? I told you from the beginning to stay away. Now you're hooked and looking for a prey to bleed dry? I'm not some common prey. Aren't you afraid of choking on my blood? I didn't mean that. I'm not an addict. You're framing me. His body felt feverish and hot. He tore open the buttons of his shirt in a rage. Get out. You dared to spike my drink today. I'll deal with you tomorrow. But for now, get out of this place. Thou barely managed a word before someone dragged her out. Watching her disappear, Tuan frustratedly ripped the rest of his buttons open and headed straight upstairs. He had been heavily drugged tonight. If he didn't find someone, he didn't know if he could endure until tomorrow. He pushed open the bedroom door. Seeing his contract wife sleeping soundly, He stripped off his shirt, tossed it on the floor, and went straight to the bed. He pulled back the covers and dragged Hai into his arms. Startled by his rough movements, Hai woke up and tried to push him away. Tuan, he didn't let her. His lips pressed against hers in a frantic kiss that left her breathless. His hand brushed against her collarbone, but he stopped there, not advancing further. His voice was hoarse and pained. I feel so terrible. Can you help me? Hai could see he wasn't lucid. Fearful and trembling, she pushed against him and asked, Uncle, what's wrong with you? Through labored breaths, he gasped, I've been drugged. Can you help me? Shower time, cold water, yet it brought no relief. The dose was too heavy, he was on the verge of breaking. Hai, will you be my wife? His entire body felt as if it were consumed by fire. Yet he remained patient, pleading with her. He didn't dare lay a hand on her or devour her ruthlessly. For he feared that once tonight passed, she would wake up hating him tomorrow. Hai sat up, looking deeply into his face. She saw the sweat pouring off him. His skin flushed a deep red. She bit her lip, lost in thought. She wasn't foolish, she could see his condition. And coupled with his words, she knew he had been drugged with something forbidden. Now, he lay there writhing on the bed in agony. Yet he kept murmuring his plea, refusing to force her. Tears fell as Hai clenched her fists, whispering to herself, Hai, sooner or later, you will have to give yourself to him. Whether it's now or later. It still happens. Next month when you're of age, you'll end up in his bed anyway. So, 1 month early won't matter. Having made her decision, she lay back down beside the man who was still deliriously muttering. Hai, can I? I can't bear this anymore. Her small hand pressed against his chest. Tuan felt the change. He turned to stare at her. Do you agree? Hai took a deep breath and nodded. With her permission, he moved over her, kissing her deeply, his hands roaming over every inch of her skin. He whispered into her ear, I will take responsibility. I love you. Before long, the room was filled with the heavy breathing of a man and the soft moans of a young woman. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the room, but the remnants of the night's passion had not yet faded. The girl lay in the man's arms, breathing steadily. Her body was marked with patches of blue and purple, traces that revealed exactly how intense their night had been. Hai's eyes fluttered open, she shifted, feeling a weight on her. Instinctively, she pushed against his chest, her face suddenly turning a bright crimson as the scenes from the previous night flashed through her mind. She hurriedly looked down. Under the blanket, she realized she didn't have a single stitch of clothing on. Furthermore, the old uncle beside her was so perverse that even in his sleep, he held her in a way that made her feel something staggering against her. She lay perfectly still, not daring to move. He woke up shortly after, stroking her hair and planting a gentle kiss on her forehead. Sleep a little longer. Hai feigned deafness, not daring to face him. Just hearing his voice brought back the images of last night, how he had made her cry out and scream. He truly was the definition of the older the ginger, the more pungent the spice. Her entire body ached. He had tormented her all night until she finally drifted off into an exhausted sleep. She didn't know at what point she had stopped feeling shy. He had seen everything. Your entire person belongs to me now. You aren't allowed to think of anyone else, or I'll get jealous. Hai sat up, looking long and hard at his face. Sweat was pouring off him, and his skin was an unnatural shade of red. She wasn't naive enough not to realize something was wrong. His words from earlier still echoed. His body was being affected by something abnormal. He rolled around on the bed, uncomfortable, his voice raspy as he called her name. But even amidst that intense agitation, he still tried to keep his distance, repeating over and over that he would not force her. Hai stood there, her hands clenched tight. Her mind was a tangled mess of thoughts, not just about tonight, but about everything that had been smoldering between them. The feeling of closeness, the moments their eyes met only to quickly turn away, things that had never been named. She wondered if there were things that had to be faced sooner or later. Where did the boundary lie? Hai stepped closer. No one said another word. There was only breathing, and a moment that both knew, after it, nothing would ever be the same again. The thrilling story continues. Will the young girl torment the old uncle? Find out in the next chapter.